This week in PlayStation, we're talking about the redesigned PlayStation 5. Which PlayStation studio has been the MVP of the PS5 era? And did I say the MVP? Did I say it right? I didn't sound like I said it right. All right, fine. We're gonna keep going. And the best Spider-Man games of all time. We'll have all this and more because this is PS I Love You XOXO. Welcome to the show, everybody! That's Bear in the control room. That's Blessing at the desk, and I'm Greg. And of course, you can get this show on patreon.com/KindaFunny. There you can watch us record it live. You can get it ad-free and get dozens of exclusive monthly episodes of exclusive content only on patreon.com/KindaFunny. If you have no bucks to toss our way, it's no big deal. Support us on the Epic Game Store, Fortnite, Rocket League, or Fall Guys with the creator code KindaFunny. You can get PS I Love You XOXO for free with ads and without the exclusive content on youtube.com/KindaFunny games and podcast services around the globe each and every week. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Jedi Master Deadpool, Delaney Twining. Today we're brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's start with a PSN message from you. An XCash shirt on PS I Love You, huh?
I've been told the shirt looks good on me.
It does look good on you. Well, here's, again, though. When have I ever seen you in a shirt where I'm like, nah.
That's true.
That ain't the look.
Fair. I like that shirt on you, though.
This shirt?
KindaFunny.com/store.
Eventually.
One day.
The new Halloween stuff.
There.
We're teasing it right now. You can go up and sign up for when it goes up and you'll know.
But yeah, I just like the green. I like the pattern. It's also comfortable. I also like the XCash logo.
Yeah.
The PS Love You logo is sick as hell, too.
Yeah,
but like, I don't know, everything about it. It's fashionable.
It looks real good. You know, they tried to steal our content.
Really?
I had to step in yesterday. They were talking about for some reason. Just talking about the PS5 redesign.
I saw this. I saw somebody tweet about this, like them talking about.
What are you doing?
Like,
what are you doing?
They have so many L's, so that like the one weird PlayStation decision like in the last 6 months, they had to jump onto it because Gary had opinions.
They've only had one good game this year. Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, there it is. I was coming. There it is. You got it, Bless. Good job.
I guess they also have Forza Motorsport. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, but you're not gonna.
You don't
care about.
I'm barely
it's not
playing
even
Gran
a fun.
Turismo.
It's not even a fun driving game.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
driving the track over and over again.
It's together.
I got the Gran Turismo movie for that.
Exactly. The movie we all saw.
Yeah. Did you remember that? You ever seen that one?
I did not see the Gran Turismo movie.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen Twisted Metal either. And I don't know if I'm
and you were the biggest fan.
And I don't know if I'm dropping the ball or not right now as a PlayStation podcast host and a quote unquote PlayStation guy. Like, was this required reading?
No.
Is it like because when a new PlayStation exclusive game comes out, I'm expected to play it.
Yeah.
Right? But like PlayStation,
we're a game. We are a
things.
game show, all right? Look at all this. Do you see at any point? You got the controller, you got the memory card.
One of those UMDs is like a DVD.
You don't have any of these things floating by. First off, that's clearly a fucking disc you just pointed at. That couldn't be more clearly.
No, it's because it's sitting next to the. Is this a Vita or PS?
Oh my god! It's got two sticks. Of course, it's a fucking Vita.
It's because the discs are sitting next to the Vita that made me think in size-wise they're smaller. But I guess that's not how that works. The memory card is also fucking huge compared to the controller.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, no, that's the right size. I guess. The scale's all the way up.
Okay, well, no, I mean, this is a Memory Stick Pro Duo. It's not nearly that large.
Okay, well, that's
you know what I
fair.
mean? So you're fine. There's your beautiful PSP up there.
I guess I'd never just like turned around and looked for a rare.
It's gorgeous, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Nick did a great job with this. Yeah, we don't ever really sit here, I think, and look at this and talk about how great it is.
It's because it's hard to compliment Nick, you know?
Are we going to add the PS5 Slim?
No, I mean, we never added VR2.
I mean, but like nobody's going to notice that.
Listen, it's one of those where, there's a lot going on in Kinda Funny land every day. To come in and be like, can you add this one thing? It's always like, we'll get to it later. Probably when we redesign the show. That's when you do something with it.
Yes.
Not time for that yet. But I think when we I remember it was a big deal when we added PS5, I believe.
Yeah, PS5's right there.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't saying I know that's the PS5. I was saying, I remember
That's a controller right next to it.
Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Wes, for calling out it.
I got you.
Or maybe we should get it in there. We have to talk about that stuff. For now, then, we're starting with a PSN message from Boricua Macho, who writes in and says, what PlayStation studio has been the star of the PS5 generation? Insomniac.
I was gonna say, is this much of a question?
I feel like we talked about MVP before. There were a lot of questions about the PS5 redesign. A lot of questions about Spider-Man, which we can't talk about yet. We're reviewing on Monday. A lot of things going on as a Gamescast. Then of course there'll be that after you read all the reviews, then the games you see the review for Gamescast on Monday. You see IGN's review, you read GameSpot's review, make sure you then go to kindafunny.com/PSILY. Send us your questions about the reviews in Spider-Man, because we're doing an FAQ like we often do Monday afternoon. So we'll have that up on Tuesday for you. A new episode of PS I Love You XOXO. I digress. Yeah, I feel like we talked about it a lot. So when I got this one, I was excited, like, oh yeah, and I put it down, and I'm like, wait, how many times do you have to say Insomniac?
Yeah, I think for the fun of it, we can go through the other studios, because Sony Santa Monica has probably put out, not even probably, right? Objectively, it's put out the most critically acclaimed PlayStation Studios game of the generation so far.
With Ragnarok.
With God of War Ragnarok. Housemarque put out Returnal.
And that was my thing. We can kind of do what we've joked around about Zelda with Game of the Year, right? Of like, all right, fine, Zelda's Game of the Year. What's not Zelda Game of the Year? You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like Insomniac with Miles, with Ratchet, you can toss in Spider-Man Remastered, right?
Yeah.
Already, what a track record. Based on previews, you assume Spider-Man's gonna be pretty good. Then, of course, Wolverine's still coming. Like that. In that, granted, we can put the last two to hype if you want or whatever. But still, Insomniac got there.
I think that's
carrying the PS5.
The tough thing is most PlayStation studios haven't released 1 or 2 games.
Yeah.
Right. And you look at Insomniac; they're about to release their 4th game, and their 5th game is already announced for the PS5.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that is me including Spider-Man Remastered. But you got to include it because it's there.
Yeah, you can go play.
Right. And like I think once you start getting to the other ones, there's an argument for Sony Santa Monica putting out the most highly reviewed game. I think there's an argument for Guerrilla between Horizon Forbidden West,
Burning Shores,
and then also Horizon Burning Shores, and then also Call of the Mountain if you want to count that. But like, I don't think either of us
Fire
love
Sprite.
that. You're right, that is Fire Sprite. So I wouldn't even count that actually. And so yeah, I think between Forbidden West and Burning Shores, you put Guerrilla in the running. But again, I think Insomniac being on their 4th game of the generation so far and having their 5th already announced, and it being a title that we're all excited for.
And then again, like, to correct me if I'm wrong, because this is the kind of stuff that it's kind of mush in my brain, but this is also then going to be the second PlayStation 5 exclusive from them.
Oh yeah,
Spider-Man Remastered, I'm not counting, right? Because that, like, obviously 2018, but like, so I'm not counting it for that reason. But yeah, Ratchet and Spider-Man 2 are going to be exclusive. Whereas Miles had PS4, obviously a version of that or whatever. But if we're talking specifically about the PS5 generation, right?
Yeah. And also, if you wanted to bring it to like the different facets of arguments we can make, because we can make the Metacritic argument. If we want to make the like sales argument or the popularity argument, like Spider-Man is the highest selling PlayStation IP, the fastest selling, I could say. Like I think when you look bar
it seems
for bar,
like a moot point. Yeah,
like it's gonna be Insomniac.
And again, because even if you don't want to include anything for Spider-Man 2. Because we don't know.
Yeah.
Review next week.
It's still Insomniac.
Still Insomniac, right? Let alone if they nail this. And even if they kind of miss it.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a fun game. Like, all right, cool. So Insomniac's making games. They're publishing, not perishing. Naughty Dog.
Damn. Got him.
They tried them. Again, I'm still with it. My confidence not shaken. Good on you, Naughty Dog. When this game ain't coming together, don't force it. Don't just put out factions.
He just won't call you MVP.
Exactly.
Damn.
Exactly. But I mean, they are always in wait, right? They're kind of like the Undertaker. Like whenever whenever you hear that gong, you know it's fucking on. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, hold on a second.
Yeah.
That'll always be a headliner.
But like, do you know who's the MVP though? It's John Cena all the time because he's always there. He's always making headlines.
He's not there anymore.
He's popular. It was popular. Is he not? I don't watch that much.
I mean, technically, I guess he is there right now.
I'm pretty sure I saw a clip of him there last week.
Right now, but it's not. He's not always
he was literally there.
It was a big deal that he's back.
I saw him fight a whole army last week. I saw him and like some other random dude in the ring, and like 5 other people courtside. I know he was a random dude, but
it's
like
neither here nor there. All right, neither here nor there. Don't worry about it. All right?
John Cena is 80 years old, still carrying the WWE on his back.
Let's twist the question this way then. Do you think by the end of the PlayStation 5 generation, Insomniac will still be the MVP?
Ooh, yes.
I do too.
Yeah.
I think, again, like they're racking up wins. Ratchet, KindaFunny's game of the year. Toss in Miles, toss in Remastered. Again, you assume Spider-Man 2. And I was going to say for some reason, like I don't have a really great reason. I've been listening to, for some reason, I'm really excited about the Insomniac Wolverine game.
Yeah.
I'm listening to the Marvel audio drama Wolverine: The Long Night. It's from 2018. There's already a 2nd season, but this is still season 1, and I'm having such a good time with it that I find myself every so often slipping into like, fuck, that game's gonna be good. You know what I mean? Like I love, we haven't had a great Wolverine game in a long time, and if they fucking crush this, like, holy shit, come on.
And like Wolverine probably won't be the last game of the generation from Insomniac.
Apparently not.
At this pace, like I expect maybe one more game from Insomniac for the PS5 after Wolverine.
Now that's another interesting one. So now I agree with you, and I also agree that the pedigree they're putting together, the library, the body of work for the PS5, if you're talking about who is the star of the generation, it's going to be now. It's possible that star is an interesting term. Naughty Dog's a big star, right? We always talk about them being the crown jewel, right? Maybe even overshadowing Insomniac in terms of S tier versus A tier, right? So maybe when we get there, there'll be a different argument if Naughty Dog, Santa Monica put something else out, blah, blah, blah. And there's one standout game or whatever. But in terms of the body of work you're putting out, yeah, let alone that I'm with you that like, do you think the after Wolverine, is it another smaller Spider-Man interstitial thing, or do you think it's Ratchet, or do you think it's something totally different?
That's the exciting thing about Insomniac is that it could be any one of those things, right? It could be Spider-Man 3, it could be Spider-Man 2.5, it could be Ratchet,
Spider-Man Miles Morales again.
Yeah, like it could be a different IP, right? It could be. Well, I was gonna say it could be a VR game. Probably won't be a VR game, but like it could be a multiplayer
but it won't
thing.
be. But it could be.
Yeah. Insomniac is the kind of studio that I genuinely think could do anything. I expect. And this isn't as exciting of a one, but it's a little bit exciting. It could be Sunset Overdrive remastered, right? Like a PS5 version of Sunset Overdrive. Not as
whatever
exciting,
happened to that? That felt like that was rumored a long time ago, and it was like that's.
It's because they got the IP back. I forget why that was a thing that kicked up. I think it was because PlayStation acquired Insomniac. Maybe that's where all that talk came from.
And they just did the copyright on it. Was that the deal? Got it.
But I'll put that in the same bucket as a Spider-Man remastered. And again, that's another win for Insomniac if they're able to make that happen on PlayStation 5. But even beyond that, like if they want to do a new game that's, hey, we're making a first-person shooter, like because we missed Resistance. Like we're making a new one, like a different first-person shooter that is a multiplayer thing to align with like PlayStation's multiplayer strategy, but we're basing it on like our love and adoration for a Resistance style game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do something like that as well. Like I think for them, sky's the limit. I think the more interesting question for me is, do they ever hit that S tier title by the end of the generation?
Well, that's a bunch of bullshit we're hoisting on them, right? So it's really on us. And so I think,
do they hit a title that's above 90 on Metacritic?
I'm gonna say yeah. Maybe talking about Spider-Man. Put that aside. I think Wolverine could be the breakout one. Because I think when you talk about Wolverine, you're seeing something that hasn't been done extremely well before. You know what I mean? Spider-Man games are Spider-Man games, and we love Spider-Man games, and the topic of the show is going to be Spider-Man games, right? Don't hit it, Barrett. And so it's one of those things. But when you talk about Wolverine, right, we go, oh, man, X-Men Origins Wolverine was cool with stuff falling apart and, like, his skin showing and that. But it wasn't like the story was great or this was great, right? Like, if Wolverine comes out, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm rusty on this and we haven't had to switch from Spider-Man to Wolverine talking a while. Is it confirmed that it's rated M, or they're going for an M rating?
It's been talked about. It's been rumored.
Okay.
I don't know if it's confirmed.
Okay. If it's going to be Insomniac quality, it's going to be a rated M thing. I think you're going to get something that like isn't Logan. I don't mean like that heavy, but I think is going to be that. Because one of the things I think about, and again, this isn't, you've all played Spider-Man Remastered. You've all played Miles Morales. So this isn't me talking at all about like Spider-Man, like, I'm Sony, if you're watching, I'm not violating any review embargo, right? Spider-Man is, and Tim talked about it in his preview, right? Scope, New York, let's swing across, let's use web wings. Tim's whole preview was talking about how great traversal is, right? When I've sat here and thought about Wolverine, I really am like, where is this going to be? Like, what is the moment to moment? Is it going to be open world? I sincerely doubt it, right? Like, I just don't see that working the same way. Because even though Wolverine, can pounce and leap and go, like, he's not going as fast as Spidey does, right? So it is like, are we going to be in open areas, like open wilderness? Like, are we going to be hunting in Alaska? Are we doing this kind of thing?
Stick with me. Yeah, that's what I was
love to stick with you,
It was going to a weird kind of direction.
Wait, full stop. What are you eating, Barrett?
Baked Lays.
Oh, okay, cool. It kind of looked like a Dino Chicken Nugget, and I was very excited.
No. But yeah, exactly what Blessing was saying just now. Just like, I think it would be more structured around like how they structure Ratchet and Clank games.
Sure.
Like maybe like kind of
open area,
places you can explore, but not a whole like sprawling city. Like,
which I think sounds awesome. Like, I want a awesome linear. I want an awesome Wolverine story. I want to feel it. You know what I mean? Like,
See, I want a Wolverine game that they really take their time with, because that's been my thing where people ask like, what would take Insomniac from being like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 to being like the 10 out of 10 critical across the board in the same way that we look at Naughty Dog or we look at Sony Santa Monica.
Yeah.
I think what it is time. Like, I think they just put out a lot of games, and you can feel like when you go from obviously, Spider-Man 2018 to Spider-Man Miles Morales, right? You can feel like, okay, this is iterative. But when you hop into Rift Apart, there's still that level of iteration of, oh yeah, I feel all of like the Spider-Man-isms and the Insomniac-isms in this game, right? And I think an Insomniac game feels so much like an Insomniac game, and part of that I think is just based on, hey, like, you know, we are putting these things out at a really great quality, and like we get to a place where, cool, like, you know what a Spider-Man game is, you know what a Ratchet and Clank game is. I think with Wolverine, if let's say Wolverine doesn't come out next year, let's say Wolverine is a 2026 game.
Woo!
Like we're not seeing Wolverine for another 2 to 3 years, right? And it is, hey, we took our time. Like we really looked at what a Sony Santa Monica is doing with God of War, and we wanted to make that, but for Wolverine. I think that then maybe allows you to kind of, you know, sit with the mature themes, have it be violent, have it be this thing that feels different from what you typically get from an Insomniac. I think that then helps you elevate to being in that way above 90 range.
When we're talking, see, I appreciate that you're giving context to what you think makes S tier, right? Where you're talking about Metacritic and 90 and yada yada yada. When we've put that on there, we think of Naughty Dog as an S tier PlayStation studio, I am thinking of the quality across the board, visuals, audio, yada yada, the game, the story, the gameplay, all that stuff, right? And so for me, it's less of a Metacritic thing, even though that all goes into the Metacritic being huge. I would argue that if Insomniac stays on this track, right, these games they're putting out, and even if they never break through to a 90, everything's 85 to 89, whatever the hell it is in this thing, right? If you got to the end of the generation and we're going to say Miles, Ratchet, Spidey Remastered, Spidey 2, Wolverine, another game on top of that, I think they got to go S tier just based on publishing and what they're doing and how they're putting it out. Like in terms of being a workhorse for PlayStation Studios and making great games, you know, guaranteed on the Kind of Funny scale, 4 out of 5 games or whatever it's going to be. Yeah, we'd love a 5 out of 5. Yeah, we'd love it to be the made me laugh, it made me cry, it changed, I went and hugged the Cole afterward. You know what I mean? Like you'd love all these different things about it, but like if it is just, this is a fucking awesome game and we got it in 2 years, that goes really far, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I hope they get there. Like, I think you're right in terms of their output. Like, if we're talking about what they mean to PlayStation and how PlayStation probably views them, then I put Insomniac at S tier. Right? Like, I think to that point they're the MVP. But I think for me, when I also think about S tier in a different angle, it is if Insomniac, Sony Santa Monica, Naughty Dog all came to me and they're like, hey, all 3 of us are putting out a game tomorrow. Which are you playing first? For me, I'm looking at Sony Santa Monica and Naughty Dog before I go to Insomniac.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, because I'm me, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we get to our top Spider-Man games of all time, right? I think I would, out of those 3, they're dropping tomorrow, and I don't know the IP. Mm-hmm. I think if it was just a blind box of whatever, I think I would gravitate towards Insomniac because I'd be expecting a Spider-Man or a Wolverine. If I open up and got Ratchet, I'm like, damn it, fucked up. You know what I mean?
Dang, what have I done?
I like Ratchet.
I played Last of Us 3.
I'm just saying I'd much rather play whatever's in Naughty Dog's box rather than that. But like at this point, like I am so ready for Spider-Man. I am so ready for Wolverine. Like I would love to see what those are, and I love licensed stuff. Whereas if it was a new world, if it was Corey's much rumored Sony Santa Monica game, it's like, okay, but like what is that? What am I doing with it? Still excited for him, but I just love my stupid IP and licenses.
Yeah.
Speaking of Greg Way, it's time for topic of the show. Today is your final PS I Love You XOXO, ladies and gentlemen. Where we cannot talk. Well, trust me, I've learned that once this show dies, it never dies. This is your final PS I Love You XOXO, where we can't talk about Spider-Man 2. Where we can't give you any thoughts on Spider-Man 2. So it's your final one basically before you're playing Spider-Man 2. Of course, I already talked about it at the top of the show, but to reiterate, Monday morning, the Kind of Funny Games cast will post. It will be our review of Spider-Man 2. No spoilers. You can go ahead and watch that Monday morning, like I said. Go ahead and read IGN's review, GameSpot's review, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Watch all your other friends. I assume Easy Allies. You know how it works. Then, as fast as you finish all that stuff, you will have questions about Spider-Man 2. You need to write into kindafunny.com/PSILY because myself, Blessing Adeoye, and making her return to the show, Janet Garcia will be recording a Monday episode that you can watch on patreon.com/kindafunny that will go live Tuesday. Let me check the calendar and make sure I have that right because I want to make sure it's still going. Yeah, we're still posting it on Tuesday. So you'll be able to pop up right there and get another spoiler-free, your questions answered. You know how the FAQs work. But here, on basically the eve of Spider-Man 2, I want to talk about the best Spider-Man games of all time. Blessing, we said, how do we want to do this? What are we going to do? And we came down that we each came up with our top 5 Spider-Man games of all time, as of now, pre-Spider-Man 2, to come in and talk about. When you went through and picked your 5, what criteria were you going for? What were you looking for on this?
Well, like when we sat and talked about this, right? Like the thing I floated was, hey, like let's talk about our top 5 Spider-Man games. What if we just did games with Spider-Man in them, right? Like I feel like that is the easiest, most creative way we can go about it, because I think that then spans a lot of games and lets us celebrate and talk about more games, right? And what Spider-Man brings to that. And so for me, my criteria was just, what are games that Spider-Man is in, and how do I rank them?
Sure.
My top 5.
Sure.
What about you?
Similar thing. I mean, I guess a jokey question, right? Because it is just like, for me, what game made me feel like Spider-Man? What connected with me? Where do I think the character has evolved, changed, grown, and stuff like that? And so there's a few in here that like have obviously personal memories tied to them that maybe put them in there better than some. Because when I saw it, we can see each other's list right now, and your number 5 was like, goddamn. I didn't put it on my list, but I do remember that being a great game.
Yeah. What do you want me to do? I can do my
Yeah.
number 5, because this is one where this will allow me to drill deeper into how I rank things, right? So my number 5 in my top 5 Spider-Man games is Spider-Man for the PS1. And
Neversoft. Remember this one?
yeah, I bring it in for a few reasons, right? And like one of those reasons is nostalgia. Like this was, I believe, my first Spider-Man game. And so like it introduced me to that character, and even on a deeper level, because I wasn't as a kid really watching as many Spider-Man cartoons.
Okay.
And I don't know if I saw the movie at this point. And so like for me, it was, oh, this Spider-Man character is cool, and it introduced me to characters like Doc Ock. This is my first encounter with Venom. This is my first encounter with a wider Marvel universe, because spoilers for the Spider-Man PS1 game, right? You get to the end of the game, and you're introduced to the rogues gallery of like, all these people are in the same, like they're all hanging out. Like this is kind of crazy. But yeah, like, you know, learning who Eddie Brock is, learning who all these different people are, right? And like, you know, kind of getting my first hands on with this character of Spider-Man and really falling in love with some of the mechanics, I think really moved me. Because also, you know, there are other Spider-Man games we would often refer to as, this is the template, like this is the thing that kicked it all off, right? But I think really when you get to the core of it, Spider-Man 1 for the PS1 really is like, that is the template. Right?
If
like,
if I can jump in, like for me, Spider-Man PS1, seminal game in Greg's gaming history. Black Cat, what are you doing?
Oh my God, look at her face.
Yeah, remember the age that this was being made in, all right? Nobody's looking at her face. All right. You saw how they framed it from her introduction. Spider-Man PS1, I think you nail a lot of the points of, yes, of like, for me, what I remember the most about this was obviously the story. The fact that it was like, holy shit, I'm playing a Spider-Man story, Spider-Man comic, a Spider-Man cartoon. Then it was the idea of the suits. You know what I mean? Right now you think of Insom's games, and they're already talking so many about suits and doing all these different things with Spider-Man suits. This is one, nice Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 Easter egg there. This was the one, right, of like playing this and going through and unlocking the suits and having all these different things and jumping back in and being like, holy shit, I can't believe they're doing this. And they have, you know, the Fantastic Bagman and like Quantum Spider-Man. There was things, even as a Spider-Man fan, I think at this point, maybe the Clone Saga had already happened and I had fallen off of reading, you know, but they were showing me suits I'd never seen before. And again, it was a bit more like freewheeling. Oh yeah, Armor Spider there from Amazing Spider-Man 300, right? 200, 500. That was what I remember for it. Yeah. And then as a personal thing, right? Whenever you've heard me maybe say in the past, because I'm very old and talk all the time, that, you know, when I review a video game, it's very much me it's very much me describing it to Poe in my basement, right? That's how the best friend kind of thing came up all the time, is that I'd be like, oh, it's like me describing, I talk on a podcast or a video game review and I write it like I'm talking to you in my basement. You're a best friend. And when I'm saying that, I'm legitimately going back in my head to Spider-Man PS1, because I remember Poe coming over one day and I'd been playing for hours and he picked it up and read the back of the gem case and was like, all right, so what's it about? And I like paused and gave him a whole thing. And it was like the first time in my life that I was like, oh, like I'm very much presenting here. I'm very much like, I know more about this game, yeah, because I'm playing but games than most of my friends, and like this is kind of my role in the friend groups and yada yada. I was like, oh wow, that's a touchstone for me. Yeah,
and so for me, yeah, there's the one hand of nostalgia that I have such heavy nostalgia for this game, but then on the other hand, it is the impact. It is the fact that, you know, if Spider-Man 2 for PS2, the movie game, if that was, let's say, the Mario 3, right? Like this is the Mario one of like, hey, you don't get to here without having this first. And like this is the thing that set it up. This was where you got like, yeah, the Spider-Man 1 for PS1 had a bit more brawler gameplay than the other games that came after it, because like I would say that Insomniac Spider-Man, it's an open world action game, right? But when you get into the combat, it's a brawler. Like it's basically a beat 'em up style thing, and that started here, right? You can climb on walls, you can swing through, and this was like the dawn of we're swinging and my webs are attaching to like nothing, right? Like I am swinging off of the sun basically, right? And like that's kind of, those are the concessions they had to make in the beginning of the game. I forget which villain did it. One of the villains, I think it was Doc Ock actually. Doc Ock releases like a toxic gas into New York, and so that's how they describe why. That's how they explain why you can't like land on the ground, and why you can't get too low to the ground, and why you can only like be on rooftops and stuff, and then inside buildings.
Yeah.
But like, those concessions were made so that this game could work on a PS1, and guess what? It worked on the PS1. It was fun. I haven't played it in forever, so I don't know how well.
Yeah, I know, right? That's the thing I want is it's important to do. Like these are all rose tinted glasses reviews, right? Because it is such a we did not go back and we did not have time to jump into these things, which I like because that's how this works, right? Like it's like scientific thing as we go through and pick 10 Spider-Man games we love.
That's my number 5. What's yours?
My number 5 is Spider-Man PS2 on PS2. Spider-Man 2 on PS2. Of course, this is the movie tie-in Tobey Maguire game. This was the one that really cracked the open world formula, and that's why it stands out, right? Like Spider-Man 2 on PS2 was very much like, okay, it's a weird story. You're running through and doing all this goofy ass shit like that doesn't make sense, but they're trying to line it up with the universe and they're introducing characters and da-da-da. None of that matters, right? Because what Spider-Man PS2 was a open world New York City. You talk about PS1 and the concessions made, and like, okay, well, there's gas on the street, so you can't go down there and you can't do it. This was the game of, no, you can do that. You can go be Spider-Man. You can patrol the streets. You can stop the quote-unquote random crimes. You can get the little boy's balloon back. You can run on the ground. You can be up there. You can go district to district in New York and all these different things. And that was so mind-blowing. You talk about like what Spider-Man games were and how they've evolved and what the blueprint was and da-da-da-da-da. This was the dream that really starts, I think, with GTA 3. Where when GTA 3 comes out and shows you a world that you can go anywhere in. This is Liberty City. It is third person. You can drop the camera low and you can go anywhere. I think that sandbox gameplay changed games obviously, and then it does that thing of, I remember, well, what other games could you do this with? And the dream of being a superhero, and especially after the films of Spider-Man really show what a Spider-Man would be in New York, right? Visualization outside of what comic books do. It was like, holy shit, this is amazing. And so there's all these wonky cutscenes and dialogue and different little dumb missions. But for me, the Spider-Man 2 story always goes, I was obsessed with the game, played it, had a great time. Again, platinumed it in quotes for what it would have been at the time on my PS2. Sold it back to GameStop because I sold everything at the time so I could play games. And then I got an internship out in Washington, D.C. for a summer where one Saturday I was sitting there and I'm like, motherfucker. And I got up and I went to GameStop and I bought Spider-Man 2 again and came back because I just wanted to swing around the city. I just wanted to go through and patrol. I just wanted to keep fighting random crimes and have that experience of going from point A to point B and doing whatever. And again, this is the era of games. I feel, and this is probably still exists, but I think we've all had it to some degree, right? Of you get a game and you can't afford every game. And back then, great games weren't coming out every fucking week like they are now, every second of every day. And so it was, I'll make up my own fun. How fast can I get from this place to this place? What about Easter eggs? Let's just go looking for weird things they did in the world. Like, it was a New York City I just existed in. And again, I think it's so funny and comical that the story portion of Spider-Man 2 and all the shit they tried to do in the movie universe and introduce, none of that resonates. None of that matters. I don't remember any of that. I just remember this, swinging through the city and being Spider-Man.
See, I feel like for me, like, this is one that I absolutely love, and this is one that for like the same reasons I remember it, but I also do remember like the story portions of it. Yeah. Right? Like I remember, and specifically like the movie stuff, obviously, but how these games would take liberties and just introduce random ass storylines to like the movie stuff.
And that was always the thing, you'd read the EGM article and like somebody from somewhere connected to the film would be like, oh no, it's all in universe. Dude, so this is really happening. Like, okay, that's awesome. And the movies never mention any of this.
Exactly. And I remember playing the game and my sister like seeing the movie, and like I hadn't seen the movie yet, but I was playing the game and I would ask her like, oh, is Black Cat in the movie? And she's like, no, like, who's Black Cat? And I'm like, I'm playing the game. There's a black cat in here. Like, I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah, for me, like the mind-blowing thing was playing. So my next door neighbor, Freddie, who you've probably heard of Freddie, he had Spider-Man 1, the movie game for PS2 for Xbox. I guess he had the Spider-Man 1 movie game for Xbox, not for PS2. But like I would I would play that game at his house, and that was like my next step, right? Like that was I went from playing the PS1 version of the game to playing the PS2 version, and I can kind of see like how things would evolve and like, all the things they took from that first one and brought it into like the PS2 game. But I remember playing through it and being so impressed and being so into it, right? Despite it still doing the thing where you can't land on the ground and be open world, right? Despite it, having the wonky cutscenes and having like even some wonky action and all this stuff, I still had such a fun time playing through the Spider-Man 1 movie game with Freddy. When I got Spider-Man 2, my mind was blown because like I couldn't imagine the step being that huge, right? The leap being that huge of, hey, you're going from these linear levels, these segmented levels, to now it is an open world. And Spider-Man 2 was my GTA 3. Like I hadn't owned a GTA game by the time I was playing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And so swinging through the open world, solving all the random crimes, doing all the random activities, like if I explained this game, right, without having played an Insomniac Spider-Man game, you would think I was talking about an Insomniac Spider-Man game.
Yeah.
And I think that's how pivotal and important Spider-Man 2 PS2 is the fact that this is, again, going back to the Spider-Man 1 PS1 is Super Mario Brothers 1, and Spider-Man 2 PS2 is Super Mario Brothers 3, right? Like, it brought things up to a next level where it's like, hey, we have a ground floor. This is what a Spider-Man game is now. And this set the template for open world Spider-Man.
100%. And I'm so glad it did. And again, I think that's the importance of its lineage and like where it is and why it stands out to this day. As you just watched right now, as Barrett's showing you gameplay of Spider-Man just running off the walls. Like, again, it looks way better in Insomniac's games. It feels way better. But I mean, like, this was outrageous to be doing on PS2 in 2004. Are you kidding me? Like,
it was incredible. I don't know if anybody else listening might have had this same issue, but my disc I'm pretty sure it was scratched or something because I would hit this glitch where if I'm swinging through the city too fast, my game would freeze and everything in the world would be blurry, and I would have to wait like 5 minutes for things to pop in to then continue playing. And because it's PS2, you can only like save at certain points. So I'm like, I'm not gonna restart this because it's not like the checkpoints are that generous, and so I'm just gonna wait here for the 5 minutes to let my world repopulate. And I would do that. Like, I would let that slide because that's how much I'm enjoying the game. That's how much I'm in this, is because I don't mind letting that happen. But yeah, this is a good ass open world game. And shout out to like all the Easter eggs too, of like being able to go to the Daily Bugle and do those the Daily Bugle stuff, be able to deliver pizzas with that pizza mini game. The game having the foresight to have like the crimes that are these like they have the green icons, which are citizens are telling you like, hey, this is happening, but then the purple ones are just happen like, just natural in-world events that you just happen to do. Like, I think the way that they approached being an open world game, I would say, is ahead of its time. Like, I think this game absolutely nailed that stuff.
100%. So what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Oh.
Yeah, not a Spider-Man game, but a game that happens to have Spider-Man in it. And I bring this one up mainly because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is such a beloved game, right? Like, this is a fighting game that everybody loves. This is one that so many people have nostalgia for. But then also, like, Spider-Man in that game is one that I remember playing a lot, and one that I fucking love choosing that character and like spinning all the webs and doing all that stuff. That plus like again how good the Marvel representation in the game is to introduce me to all these characters. Introduce me to a character like Iceman. Well, I didn't give a fuck about Iceman, but he played good. Like he had good gameplay, so I was like, you know what, I'll play as Iceman. But yeah, for me, like again, when we go through the list of games that have Spider-Man in them, I'm looking at the list to make sure I'm not even ruining anything, right? But like, games like Marvel Snap came to mind, games like Old School Alliance came to mind, and I think for me, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the one where I'm like, if I'm gonna pick one of those, I'm gonna pick Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Okay, fair enough. My number 4 is also a weird one like that. I'm talking about Marvel's Avengers. Now, many don't remember that. No, I'm kidding around, of course. For number 4 on my list, I picked Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. I remember when this one got announced, and I remember being so bummed. And what I'm talking about here is, of course, if you don't remember Shattered Dimensions, right? I'm looking at Hillary's review at IGN, posted September 2010, right? Like, we're talking about a game that came after all the open world stuff we're talking about. to get to Shattered Dimensions, we talk about Spider-Man 2. We talk about then, the Spider-Man 3 movie tie-in that I reviewed at IGN because I was so excited. I loved Spider-Man 2 so much that when they were like, Spider-Man 3, same shit, giant open world, I'm like, oh my God. And it was just so bad. It just fucked up so much stuff to make that game not fun.
Oh, that game was really fun. Remember the lizard?
Remember the lizard?
I mean, do you remember? I'll never forget, like, I was reviewing the game, and it was one of those things where I was playing it at the office, trying to beat it to then go see the movie that night or whatever. And the end of Spider-Man 3, the game, the way Venom convinces Sandman to work with him against Spider-Man at the end is that he calls Sandman to like Central Park or whatever. Venom's standing in front of a tree. He says to Sandman, like, you got to work with me or whatever. I think these might actually be, I can't remember. It might be the movie people. It might be Thomas Hayden Church, but I can't remember. You got to work with me. I won't work with you. I think it'll change your mind. The fact that I have your daughter, and the daughter drops from the tree behind him in the symbiote like nest.
Yeah.
She's like, Daddy, help! And Sandman drops to his knees and goes, fine, I'll do it.
I remember this.
God, it was so
So
good.
bad.
What a good, like, honestly.
There's some B-roll to find.
Yeah, no, I know. Like, here's the thing:
15 years.
Like, I never owned Spider-Man 2. I owned Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
And so, like, all the memories that y'all have, like, that's what
just
Spider-Man,
swinging
like,
and doing the thing.
Yeah, swinging as black suited Spider-Man, like, that was sick as hell. Like, I remember even just the tutorial not being like a really fun time. Obviously, there's the meme of like going through, and if you don't save the woman, she's like, I'm gonna die, and then it like blows up and stuff. Like, but shout out to Spider-Man 3 though. Back to Shattered.
We'll not give it a shout out. But
I had the exact same story as Greg when it came to Spider-Man 3, where I was so excited for it, and I played it, and I was like, and this is before I even had a critical lens for video games. I was just playing video games because all video games were fun. I played through Spider-Man 3, and I was like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on here? Like, I don't understand. Why am I not having fun?
So Shattered Dimensions comes about, and it's Beanox doing it, who we didn't know anything about at the time. And then it's this idea of, okay, it's going to be linear levels, and it's going to be for Spider-Man. It's going to be Amazing Spider-Man, it's going to be Ultimate Spider-Man, it's going to be 2099, and it's going to be Noir. And I think, of course, important to call out, obviously, this is 2010. This is long before Spider-Verse. This is long before like you're really wrapping your head around that concept as a mainstream thing. So when
a year after Arkham City or Arkham Asylum, though.
Yeah. And so you get this thing where you're like, okay, why are we doing it this way or whatever? And I remember so not being stoked about it, and Hillary giving it an 8 on IGN and going home and playing it and be like, oh my God, this actually kicks ass. Like, as you see, like because again, it wasn't even just the different characters. It wasn't suits. You're looking at Spider-Man Noir gameplay right now that looks black and white, that looks different. These heroes felt different. All the Spider-Man had different voice actors that, I think all of them were pulled from Spider-Man lore, right? And like you jump into Ultimate Spider-Man having the black suit, because I enjoyed Ultimate Spider-Man as well. That was another one we haven't mentioned yet. Yeah. That was another one that was like not exactly what I wanted in terms of an open world Spider-Man, because what I want is, what we're getting from Insomniac these days. But it was cool to play that game, and then, of course, cool to get this game and see the Rogues Gallery in each one of these universes, see how they would actually look, see how these Spider-Man will work together across dimensions. It was a really well-done Spider-Man story. I think coming off of talking about Spider-Man 2 and why that one matters, not because of the story, just because of the gameplay, I think you get to Shattered Dimensions, and you're like, oh, holy shit, like, this was a good Spider-Man story. This could stand up, right, as its own comic of what you're doing or what you're going through and why you're enjoying it. And again, getting to jump around, play these different Spider-Man, have the different thing, 2099, look badass as always, but also have his own universe, right? Dope shit.
Yeah, this is one that I never got around to playing, but I remember, I think this is what probably introduced me to the idea of Spider-Man multiverse, because I didn't understand it either. I would see it on the shelves at GameSpot or GameStop and be like, what is this? Oh, there's 4 different Spider-Man. Oh, this is really interesting, right? And that was the first I've ever heard of like a multiverse situation. So coming back around and finally getting to like Spider-Verse being as popular as it is, and being able to look back and be like, oh shit, like, man, we had an opportunity to get into this already. Like, this was already a thing that was in the ether, and if that's really cool.
Then, of course, what's so sad about this, right, is that this is Beanox's first Spider-Man game. We all play it. We're fucking stoked. Then they're like, guess what? Next year, getting Spider-Man Edge of Time. And we're like, whoa, that seems really quickly. And then the year after that, like, yo, you're getting Amazing Spider-Man. We're like, yo, Edge of Time wasn't that great. Amazing Spider-Man is even worse. Then they're like, all right, we'll take 2 years off, give you Amazing Spider-Man 2. We're like, this is even worse.
God.
What are you doing? And then Activision was like, you know what? Why don't you guys just help out with Call of Duty? You no longer have any creative freedom. And that was the end of it.
Peace.
I mean, they're still going.
Wait, what are they doing?
They're still helping out with Call of Duty.
God.
Yeah, no,
Save
Beanox
them.
is
Save them.
still out there doing all this stuff. I mean, hey, man, that's Activision for you. I digress. What is your number 3?
I got Spider-Man Miles Morales. My number
Ooh, your most hated Spider-Man game.
A game that I absolutely despise. No, Miles Morales is super dope. Miles Morales is one that, like, you know, I really appreciate as like a succinct Miles Morales focused thing, right?
Yeah.
Being able to have like a just Miles Morales product, right? That being what, the first Miles game that is just like just you playing Miles. I have to imagine, right? Like, did we have one before that?
Unless they slip. I mean, yeah, like in terms of a true Spider-Man game, yeah,
Yeah.
this is his first standalone thing. Then.
So it being that, it representing, you know, Miles' neighborhood in New York so well, right? It being this centered, hey, we have this story that is centered around Miles' family, Miles' friends, Miles' community, and having a bit of more of a deeper dive into that, I really appreciate. And then it also, you know, doing the thing where it took so many of the 2018 mechanics and systems and refined them in a way that I think, you know, worked a bit more smoother and worked a bit more better. I think all that stuff was done well, right? And like people have heard my comparisons and complaints, right? Of like, man, I wish the story had more time to breathe and all that stuff, yada yada. But like, I think still, even despite that stuff, Miles Morales still a really great game, and one that, like, in the Spider-Man pantheon and the Spider-Man ecosystem of games is right there at the top with 2018 and maybe one other one that I have in my top 3.
Yeah, I was gonna say I want to talk about Miles eventually on my own ranking list, but we can table that part of the conversation to get to it later and talk about why I love it a bit more than you do. My number 3 is Spider-Man on Sega Genesis. This is another one of like rose-tinted glasses for sure, right? Because this is one I have not gone back and played in forever years, and a very personal story to me. Like, if you haven't ever heard it, my Spider-Man Sega Genesis story goes like this. My dad, number one crane operator, Greg Miller, union proud. And so as a kid, it's very hard to understand when your dad's home from work, but he's not fired from work. The job's over. He's waiting for the union to send him out on another gig, or which did happen, right? They're on strike or something like that, right? And so, like, if my dad was home, the only way my little kid brain could understand it was my dad is unemployed. We don't have money. We're going to lose the house, or we won't be able to feed us, or yada, 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 whatever the hell it was going to be. And I'll never forget, you know, watching cartoons with him one afternoon when he picked me up from school. And again, this is all so out of order, right? You know, my mom or grandma was always with me after school, not dad. He was at work until, 5:30, 6 o'clock or whatever. And he was at home with me watching cartoons with me, and they ran a Sega Genesis commercial. I had the Genesis already. They ran a commercial that was the Toe Jam and Earl and Spider-Man. Genesis, got to get Genesis like nothing with Toe Jam and Earl. And it was this combo commercial showing both games. And I remember sitting there on the floor looking at it and telling my dad, I'm like, that is the coolest video game of all time. Like, that has to be the coolest video game of all time. And my dad, this isn't me knocking my dad, never bought a Christmas gift. Like, you know what I mean? That was mom's job. She went off and did all that. My dad, who I don't think, knew at all what system I had, was like, okay, register that information. And then the next day, this isn't the right Spider-Man game, by the way. I linked it.
Okay.
I linked it in the doc, Spider-Man Genesis. That sometimes it's called Spider-Man versus the Kingpin. Thank you, though, Barry.
Gotcha.
Sorry about that. My dad, kept all that information in his head, and the next day when I came home from school, in front of the TV, wrapped in the Toys R Us bag, was Spider-Man on Sega Genesis. And I remember opening that up and popping it in, and we talk about like, oh, this is what this game became, or you can see the thing here and there. Like, it was playing the dream of being Spider-Man. Like, you just saw him crawling on the walls. You see him crawling on the ceilings here. You can throw a web and get up and go over people. There are photo opportunities in the game to take photos as Peter Parker. Like, I was, as I teased at the front of this, right? Like, I was the licensed video game kid. I fell in love with video games and found video games because of Ghostbusters. No joke. That's what I saw on the aisle that got me my Sega Master System, which made me a Sega kid, and da-da-da. And then from there on out, what I would often, if not for a long time, if not solely ask for, were things of, oh, there's the Jurassic Park game. Oh, there's this Superman game. Oh, there's this thing. Because I wanted the things I love to be on the screen. And most of those times that ended in me being not upset, like I'm sobbing, but like, oh, this isn't what it's like. You right there, he took a photo of Doc Ock because that's like a challenge. It was one of those of like, oh, this isn't what it feels like to be Batman, right? Batman Genesis didn't feel like Batman, you know what I mean? And Batman NES and all that stuff. This was the first game I really remember sitting down, putting it in. I guess Ghostbusters did feel like being Ghostbusters, but in terms of superheroes, where I popped this in, I'm like, this looks like the comic book. They have all this different stuff happening in it. There's a story. It feels like what I think Spider-Man should feel like as I go through and fight these villains and take photos. And you get to go to your apartment as Peter Parker, and like you're on the roof and you'll stop there. And if you go idle, you hold your chin and think and shit. It was like mind blowing to me as a kid that they were able to do this, that they were able to go and make a game that was Spider-Man. So again, I feel so when I look at Spider-Man from Insomniac and I'm like, man, they fucking crushed this. I see so much of this game there. Even not that I'm saying they're inspired by it, but they're doing such a good job. And this game did such a good job of making it feel like I really was Peter Parker. I really was Spider-Man. Up until the very end where you have to fight Kingpin and Mary Jane is on a hook being lowered into like acid. And I could never do this as a kid. I could never, ever do this thing.
What a situation.
So Mary Jane died infinite times in my life as I was just watching her die over and over again as I tried to beat Kingpin. But like, even now, you know, it's one of those, I think, and again, I'm the IP kid, the licensed kid. I look at this and I'm like, God damn, this game looks great. Like, I love the art of this game. I love how Spidey looks in this game. And it's just one of those brawlers that I thought did so much right and really expanded Spider-Man. And I've talked a long time about Spider-Man Sega Genesis, but I don't get enough time to, let alone it being a heartwarming, cherished memory between me and my father. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where it's like, my dad was not that guy.
It's so funny because I thought the story was going to go differently. I thought it was going to be you being like, oh man, this is the coolest game ever. And your dad goes and gets it and brings home Spider-Man. And you're like, no, I was talking about Toe Jam and Earl. Like, I thought that's really where the story was going to go.
Toe Jam and Earl I never vibed with.
But that means a cool game, cool dudes. Right?
Totally, yeah. But you notice too, all right, there is an established IP and then something new. Oh, fuck the new thing.
Like, oh, fuck Toe Jam.
I don't know what these aliens are.
Yeah.
Toe Jam sounds gross. No, thank you.
My number 2, Spider-Man 2 for the PS2.
Hey!
Yeah, I hold it that highly, right?
Yeah,
I regard it that highly. And it's one that I think if I were to go through my list of my most played through video games, of games that I played through multiple times, like Spider-Man 2 is up there. Spider-Man 2 is probably top 3 or 4 of like, I played that game a lot as a kid.
Yeah.
Just because I like going back through, clearing all the stuff. And, you know, like I mentioned all the different activities, right? But it's like, I think had a lot of activities. You know, they had the obstacle courses. They had like, you know, the Daily Bugle stuff I mentioned, but then also there was a warehouse where you fought Shocker. And if you go back there, you get like, you know, combat trial stuff. You had a bunch of villains that like, I wasn't as aware of, right? That were introduced in that game. I forget what villain led, like there was like a robot mech army that you fight at one point, and I forget what villain led that shit. But that's like something I remember as like, if there's one bullshit thing in that game, it's those.
Was that Mysterio?
Maybe it was Mysterio. Oh, that's another thing though that this game does that's rad is that your final boss fight with Mysterio, it's like Mysterio's in a department store just harassing the cashier, and you go in and like the big like the health bar comes up for Mysterio, and it's like, oh shit, all right, here's the big boss fight, and you go and you hit Mysterio once, and his fishbowl flies off of his head, and like all the damage goes down, and like it's a one-hit kill with you versus Mysterio. This game got it, dude. This game got it. But yeah, shout out Spider-Man 2. That's my second favorite Spider-Man game of all time.
Wow. High on the list. I appreciate that. I like that.
You know, like, that's the thing where it's when I'm doing a list like this, right? It's that measurement of impact versus quality. Because like, you know, Miles Morales is a better playing game, better looking game,
no
right?
one's saying
like
that.
bar for bar, Miles Morales, better game to play in 2023, right? But I think for me, what really brings up Spider-Man 2, besides the nostalgia, is the impact. Like, this game did it. Like, this Insomniac Spider-Man doesn't exist in the way it does without 100%. Spider-Man 2 for PS2.
100%. You can't say that enough. I'm going to cheat here. I want to give you my second one and my first one. Okay. All right. Because I think it's obvious. We've come down to pretty obvious games that should be here.
Yep.
My number 2 Spider-Man game of all time is Marvel's Spider-Man 2018.
Which is my number 1.
Exactly. And my number 1 is Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales. Starting with 2018, right? I mean, what can you fucking say? Mm-hmm. What an amazing game. You know what I mean? Like, again, we all expected greatness from it. I remember going and doing the preview event or whatever. But like that opening right? The way this game opens of Peter Parker being established, the toast popping out, the app, you jump out, and you're right into the streets, you're right up to Kingpin, like all this shit. Like it's like fuck yes, this game is so goddamn good. If you remember, one of the things I said in the review that I stand by, but I also feel like an empty criticism to a degree, is that the story was a bit too by the numbers for me. Where I felt like what I meant by that, of course, is like, and these are spoilers for 2018 Spider-Man. I think you'd all be there, right? The idea that when Doc Ock got introduced, I was like, oh, that's awesome. I really hope they don't make him bad. I hope that we're going an opposite way with this. Like, you can see it all happening as you do the experiments and you're making the thing. I was like, that's cool. But, and then it did. I was like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? And then when there had been a long stretch, remember, where it was like, when Peter was like, it's you in the there was and we were all like, who's it going to be? And it just turned out to be Doc Ock. And it was that. It was like, okay. And then they introduced the Sinister Six, but we just fight him really quickly. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't love that. And it's like, again, by the end of it, Miles is going to be Spider-Man. I felt like I knew where we were going the whole time. And again, that I do think cheapens a lot of things that happen in the game. Obviously, Jefferson Davis's death, the way it happens, taking over as Miles, playing as him, the death of Aunt May, right? Like they do a bunch of stuff in here that isn't that, but still playing it, like the overall experience, I felt at the time it was like, this is amazing. This is the best Spider-Man game I've played. They've done so much of it so right, but I wasn't left like rocked by it, I guess. Is the thing about it.
Like similar with a critic, because I always felt similarly to you, Greg, and I remember you and I bouncing back and forth when we were both playing this, and we were both racing to see who could get the platinum first. My thing, what Bless says about Miles of like not letting the story breathe, I felt for this one, we didn't get to let the villains breathe a little bit,
that's a great
and
way
just
to put
like
it.
learning about even Martin Lee, who's like a significant part of the story. I don't feel like we get too much of, and then like Doc Ock, who becomes the main villain, it's like you kind of learn about his like descent into madness through phone calls, which I didn't love, and so it's little things like that I was always on the same page of with you.
And I feel one of those things, and don't get me wrong, I love a big game and I love a big world and I love a big story. Back to the breathing thing, is I think this one maybe breathed too much. There was too much time between breaths, right? Because my number one is Spider-Man Miles Morales. And again, I think some of this could ring a bit hollow, so I want to make sure I'm expressing that. One of the reasons I think Miles worked better for me was that I knew less about Miles. You know what I mean? Like, I have read Miles Bendis' comics. Like, I knew who Miles was. I'm not saying I was coming in here sight unseen, but I felt like there was more juice there with Finn and Tinkerer and, okay, cool, this, that, the other. And then just really getting to know his family, getting to know Genki, getting to be in that with them and like see the hero's journey of becoming Spider-Man Miles Morales, right? Like the, scene in Miles Morales where it's like, Pete gives you a suit, and I was like, oh, it's going to be the suit. And you put it on, and it's not the suit. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. We're still building to that. Like, compare that to 2018, where it's years and years and my entire life of knowing Spider-Man and Peter Parker and knowing so many different angles of it. Like, again, it's going to be harder to surprise me in that story than I think it would be for Miles. But I do think of, the villain problem you always bring up, right? Of like, fucking Topher Grace, Troy Baker at the end there, right? Troy Baker plays this guy who looks just like Topher Grace, and I don't even remember what Roxxon bad guy, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't remember anything about that, but it also didn't matter to me, right? Like, I liked the stuff with Finn. More importantly, though, I liked Miles learning to become Spider-Man. Like, I didn't need a strong villain there to have that be what it was. And let alone, as I've talked about before, Insomniac taking the lessons of 2018 and applying them here to cinematography, what you were doing, the way they make Harlem feel like a vibrant, living, breathing place that it didn't feel like. The districts in general didn't really feel like in 2018, right? New York was big and there was a ton of stuff to do, but like this one had an identity. The introduction of Haley, like the Spider Cat, Bodega Cat, right? Like it was like one of those things of like, I just really dug everything about Miles Morales, and the fact that it was so condensed and let me get into all of it and go with it, I think really made it matter more to me in terms of this is Spider-Man and I love this.
Yeah, I think in terms of the details that we're all talking about, right? I think I tend to agree with all of it.
Yeah.
In terms of like how that stuff hits with me, I think that's where it's the difference of. I think both Miles Morales and 2018 have the pros and cons. For me, yeah, when it comes to 2018, the Sinister Six portion is like, oh man, this feels like you're putting in a lot here and like a weird point of the story, and now it feels like it is stretching a bit, and like the pacing was weird, right? I feel like 2018 for me was a bit too long, and Miles Morales for me is a bit too short in terms of what the story that they want to tell and trying to pace those things well. But I think for me, the thing that really works about 2018 and the thing that makes 2018 resonate with me in the way that it's my number one on my list is the fact that it had that wow factor of I had never played an Insomniac Spider-Man game before, and guess what? An Insomniac Spider-Man game is fucking excellent, right? Like as I started to play 2018, I'm like, man, swinging feels more right than I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Right. Like that, like being able to run on the walls, being able to swing through New York and like the camera angle and like the momentum of it and like getting in all the tricks in it, like all it, and then you get into combat and it's like, wow, like I love having all these different web gadget abilities on this weapon wheel that I have, right? And being able to bust them all out. And it feels like you're playing a renewed and refreshed Spider-Man game in a way that finally we've lifted out of license. Like this isn't a licensed game anymore. Like it's licensed a game, but it's like this is a video game. Like, all the ones that came before, I think there's a level of, okay, well, this is based on something. Okay, like this is good for a licensed game, right? Like even Spider-Man 2, as much as I love Spider-Man 2, and as much as I love Spider-Man 2 as a video game, right? Like that's still a movie game. And Spider-Man Insomniac in Miles Morales, right? Like break through that barrier so strongly. And yeah, like everything about how it feels, how it controls is great, right? And like for me, I think that was one of the ones that brought Miles down a little bit, is that started playing Miles and I was like, okay, it is more Spider-Man. We're back. And like, after a while, after playing so much Spider-Man 1 especially, it was like all right, cool, I'm playing more of this. And that's a good thing, right? And it's also the thing of, well, that still makes 2018 resonate in my heart a bit brighter.
And I understand that.
Yeah, I like these lists.
I did too. So to recap my list, 1 to 5, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Number 2, Marvel's Spider-Man 2018. Number 3, Spider-Man on Sega Genesis. Number 4, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. Number 5, Spider-Man 2 PS2. Blessing, yours?
Number 5, I got Spider-Man PS1. On number 4, I got Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And number 3, I got Spider-Man Miles Morales. And number 2, I got Spider-Man 2 PS2. And number 1, I got Marvel's Spider-Man Insomniac.
We had 3 games we did not talk about that people wrote in at kindafunny.com/PSILY. And I'm going to tell you all about them right after I talk about patreon.com/kindafunny. Over on patreon.com/kindafunny, of course, you could be watching the show live just like Anthony Corbett is, Piano Fish Tank is, and Tyler Washington is. Of course, if you want to be there, you could be patreon.com/kindafunny. You could get each and every episode free. You could get it on demand ad free. You get us video and MP3. You could watch other podcasts live as we record them. You could get more than 300 bonus episodes we've recorded and published since we launched the studio 1 year ago. And of course, there's exclusive merch there. But I digress. You're not on patreon.com/kindafunny. So here's a word from our sponsor.
This episode's brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. The NFL season is going strong, and DraftKings Sportsbook is hooking new customers up with an offer that's even stronger. You can bet $5 on any game this week to score $200 instantly in bonus bets, and DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of a sweetener offer every game this October. There's a ton of these football games happening, and each and every one, you're going to want to be there on DraftKings Sportsbook. You can get in on the game day greatness. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and you can use code KindaFunny. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet $5 on the NFL. That's code KindaFunny only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, you can call 1-877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. You can call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Blue Hill Casino and Resort KS, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles, LA. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in ONT. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility and deposit restrictions. Terms responsible gaming resources.
Okay. 3 games that were left off the list here, according to what we got write-ins, okay? Number 1 will go to Evan. Evan says, Maximum Carnage for Sega is my favorite Spider-Man game of all time. For years as a kid, it was my favorite game, period. Would love to see it get some love and find out others loved it as much as I did/do. Do you remember Maximum Carnage?
No.
You're too young for this?
Probably.
Had a red cartridge. Dope as fucking hell.
Oh, you know what? I think I do remember Maximum Carnage, actually.
What happened for me with Maximum Carnage, of course, coming off of Spider-Man on Sega Genesis, the next one was Maximum Carnage. And at a glance, I was like, yes, it's going to be so great. My problem with Maximum Carnage wasn't that it was bad or anything like that, but as you look at it, what is it? It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, right? Yeah. It was Death and Return of Superman. It was Streets of Rage. It was a million other games. And while there was elements of that to my Spider-Man game, Gone were taking the photos. Gone was the apartment. Gone was the
Spider-Man is beating the fuck out of these guys.
Yeah,
in this
like,
game.
yeah, these like
he
really
is showing no mercy. God,
really detailed with bad guys he's beating up, right? But you did this, and you could have people pop in like that with Silver Sable, is that right? Then oh no, is it Hawk and Dove? No, I forget this part. But it was Venom was there.
Dagger?
Obviously, you guys were Cloak and Dagger. Thank you. I'm such a
Yeah.
DC guy. I'm like, wait, that's Hawk and Dove are the wrong universe. Anyways. And the shit like this gets introduced. I'm like, I don't know who these people are. Obviously, you did have Eddie Brock as Venom, though. You did have Carnage and shit. That was cool. You could go through and play it with your friends. It was fun. It didn't resonate with me the same way the other ones did, but as you look at it, like, dope ass game.
Yeah.
For what it was at the time, let alone.
I remember getting to the end of Spider-Man 1 for PS1 and Carnage being like the big final boss and
Yeah.
how cool that was.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Really cool. You had to like swing away from him too and escape.
I do. Look at this tongue just going up in the air.
Oh, you get to play as Venom.
Oh yeah. This was a big deal. You guys had to come together. Remember, this was based on the Maximum Carnage like storyline where you guys had to.
Yeah, fun fact, I actually did motion capture for Venom here.
Oh wow.
Whoa.
Oh wow, boss baby with the tongue. I see
Yep.
what I do. I see. Adam Daniels wrote in said Spider-Man 1. He's talking about the first movie Spider-Man game.
Hell yeah.
Playing as Green Goblin was such an awesome and surprising twist.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with both after I learned about it. I remember that as well. That's a game I remember playing at my desk in college. Yeah, in my dorm room playing that on PS2. And I remember, when you could you eventually unlocked Green Goblin to just run around and be screwing around.
That game had a lot of cool modes. There was like a wrestling ring mode. That was like a enemy horde type thing, a horde mode. And like you did that in the wrestling ring from Spider-Man 1 the movie. I always thought that was pretty neat. Yeah. Do you know that game? So Spider-Man 1 for PS1, I believe, came out in like 2000. And then Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro came out in like 2001. And then the movie game came out in like 2002.
Damn.
Yeah. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
And like when I play, I want to say like a lot of those movesets carried over. Because I want to say Spider-Man 1, definitely for PS1, you could like do web hands where you
you web up your hands.
web up your hands so you do like more attack. And then like there was like a web dome move where you dome yourself in a fucking web and then
Explode out, yeah.
Yeah. And like I want to say a lot of those moves came back in the Spider-Man movie game.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want them to come do that for like, I want Insomniac to add those to the games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Let me do web fists.
Then Ethan wrote in. Ethan says, why did you rate Web of Shadows so low, Greg?
Why?
This was echoed by Adam Daniels, who said, Web of Shadows. I know it gets a lot of hate, but I love the morality system, the symbiote powers, and the different storylines based on the decision you made. If you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, Spider-Man Web of Shadows, one of my, in quotes, most contentious reviews at IGN, way back in the day on October 30th, 2008, I gave Spider-Man Web of Shadows a 5.3, calling it mediocre.
That hurts.
In the end, Spider-Man Web of Shadows is a missed opportunity. Activision, Treyarch, Aspire, and Shaba were given a blank slate to create whatever Spider-Man-inspired tale they wanted, and they put together a game starring a whiny hero, a foggy story, repetitive gameplay, and a focus on pretty combat combos instead of engaging combat mechanics. Web of Shadows is better than the last Spidey game to make it to market, but that's not a ringing endorsement. If this game makes your spider sense tingle in a good way, I'd suggest renting it or waiting for a price cut before taking the plunge. Web of Shadows has its moments of fun, but they are lost in a sea of gaffes that true believers are likely to revile. God, I could write.
That was, first of all, that was very well written. Like you convinced me. Second of all, that gameplay video was hurting my eyes. Like I don't know what's going on with the camera in this game, but it was all over the place. Thirdly, there was a scene in this gameplay video where he hops off a building and like you get a close up of like the bottom of his soles, and it's the bottom of his feet so dirty. I understand that he's outside, right? And the bottom of his feet is gonna get dirty because he's outside running and all this stuff. But like, I don't know, I didn't need that view. It just seemed kind of gross.
Okay.
I rest my case.
I recently took it to Twitter. I'm gonna try. I should have had this ready to go. Where somebody came at me and I quote tweeted them. Here it is. Yeah. I had gotten this tweet on September 7th out of the blue. Nothing. I don't think it's in response to anything. No, just out of the blue. I got this tweet, which was, in 2008, you gave Spider-Man Web of Shadows a 5. Judging from the gameplay footage, you sucked at the game. The game may not have been perfect, but the fact that you gave it a low score because you sucked was unfair. I've held a grudge against you ever since. Middle finger emoji. To which I quote tweeted and said, "Hello, Truth Teller," which is the account name. "In 2008, we handed the game to the video team and they captured footage for the video review. You have no idea if I'm good at the game or not. Your truth is now lies. Good luck sleeping tonight. Your world is rocked." And rather than just being a fun dunk, what I really did appreciate was people coming out of the woodwork like Imran and Anthony Carboni to be like, "Yo, it sucked though. That game wasn't good." Because it's one of those, as the years have gone on, all I've gotten is the people who think I'm wrong telling me I'm wrong. So you're like, did I get it wrong? And so the fact that
Yeah,
people
man.
No?
You have to fight a symbiote Wolverine, and it's sick as hell.
Yeah, but again, like I just told you, the combat sucks. Like it wasn't fun to play.
I remember it being fun.
How old were you? 2008?
I didn't get it in 2008. Like I played it, I think, a couple of years late because I remember getting this on the 360, and I didn't have one until I lived in San Francisco. So, yeah.
We had it on the thermometer last year to do a full play of it, me playing all the way through it again to see if I changed my mind or anything about it, and nobody funded it. But I would like to one day do that because I think it would.
I would love to be on that ride
a
with
fun,
you.
interesting thing to go back. Because like again, like they have really cool fucking ideas in the game.
You can pick up cars and throw them at Venom, dude. It's
I know,
sick.
right? I'm
So
aware.
far, I'm with Greg here. This doesn't look that great.
But you had like a branching story where you could be good, you could be bad.
Some say it's the better
Feels like
Infamous, you know?
Okay, guys, let's not get fucking crazy.
Like
here, all right?
Dude, yeah,
No
one of
one's
the
saying
endings
it's a
was
better
sick
prototype.
where you'd be
no
like
one's saying prototype. It's better than this.
you could end one of the stories where you're black suited Spider-Man, and then you
Take over the world.
Take over the world, but then you are in a relationship with Black Cat.
I remember that. That was I remember that ending. But yeah, you do fight Wolverine at one point, and you can tear him in half.
Oh, that's cool.
it's so
Yeah.
Because he
cool.
But
like,
they cheap out on it and they don't show it. Like so it's like you get like camera angles to show that he's like.
does he regenerate? Does it come?
Yeah,
back
of course he
together?
does.
Oh yeah, Wolverine's really
But
cool.
I mean, I don't think he's like I will eventually kind of thing. You like walk off and leave him all fucked up.
And you also hang out with like Moon Knight and shit. There were a lot of like kind of like deeper cuts. I feel like at the time that was like, oh shit, I'm learning a bit more.
I'm learning.
I'm learning. Blessing, what happened this week in PlayStation?
Not much.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. No, we got a PlayStation 5 Slim announced.
What?
Yeah, it's like 30% smaller. Yeah, it has a detachable disc drive. If you get a digital version, you can buy the disc drive for $70. It's pretty cool. It has like a small slit on the side of it. I'm going off memory because I don't feel like reading the thing.
Damn. Damn. Okay.
But and also, people, if you're listening to this podcast, you know what happened. $450. $450 for the digital version is $500 still for the disc version. I think those are all the details.
$80 if you want to buy the disc version. If you want to buy the disc drive later,
Yeah,
you can
$80.
buy. You can buy for $450 right now. No disc drive.
Yep.
You can buy at $500 with the disc drive. That's a $50 price difference.
And it's worth noting that the current digital version before this refresh is $400, and so it's a $50 price increase.
But you're getting more space.
Yeah, it's a
'cause-
terabyte
Yeah.
as opposed to
See,
terabyte?
that
Wasn't it terabyte, right?
518? No.
no. See, I don't think it's an actual increase because I think both digital and disc for the original PS5 were both 1 terabyte.
I think it was. I want to say
It's advertised as 1 terabyte. But you really get like
you get like 600 though.
It's
It's like, I
six
think
or
it's
seven.
Storage 825
okay.
gigabytes.
That's what I was gonna say. I think it was like 825, and then with like extra file stuff, it then comes down to 600 in reality. So now you're actually getting the 825 that you're advertised.
Is that true though? Do we know that?
No, we don't know that.
Because
mean,
that's,
you would imagine
again,
so.
the first iteration was advertised as 1 terabyte, but that wasn't
We'll
the
see.
case.
But then also
Where was it advertised as 1 terabyte though? And I'm just making sure we're clear. That's all.
I feel like whatever fucking when they're releasing specs and stuff, it was like, oh, what's the size of the SSD or whatever it is inside of it, and it would say 1 terabyte. But then, like when it came to actual available space, it was less.
Yeah, because like I feel like I remember it being 1 terabyte, but also I think I assumed I misremembered because I think on the box it might be 825.
Yeah,
and then the actual-
Norman in the chat says nope. The gross amount is 825. The Slim goes up to 1 terabyte.
Yeah, so I think the Slim is actually going to be like 1 terabyte, but then the actual space you're going to get out of it, because of course they're going to have all the files already on it, will be like probably 850 something. We'll see when it happens though. The one other thing.
So
though,
either way, you're getting more gigabytes, but maybe not the full 1 gigabyte.
Yeah.
1 terabyte. You know what I mean?
yeah, and
GBs.
this one comes with a sideways or horizontal stand as opposed to the vertical stand. You could buy a vertical stand if you want to for $30.
But again, just get a paper towel rack. You're all set.
exactly. I got
Did you-
three. Go for
Okay,
it.
no, please. I was going to get into reactions to it, so we can go from there.
I got 3 burning questions from people. Of course, me and you talked about it on KFGD. We gave our thoughts and all that stuff. But there are 3 questions that were left unanswered. They're some of the most asked questions from the audience. So I want to start off with Co-op64, who writes in and says, "Good morning, Greg and Bless. With the announcement of a new SKU of the PS5, do you think this would have been better served as part of last month's state of play compared to a blog post? Giving this upgrade the spotlight in a way to reflect positivity to the consumer. Thank you for what you do, Co-op 64. Do you think this would have been better as a state of play?
No.
No?
No. I think this is one of those things that isn't exciting necessarily. This really is just, hey, we're updating the SKUs. When you buy through the consoles that are already out there, this will be the SKU from here on out. So this is what it's going to be. Cool. Thanks. I don't think this. What I was going to ask you is, have you been surprised by the reactions? Because it feels like they are all over the board and quieter than I would have thought. Period.
Yeah.
But then it is the cool, and then it is the this is outrageous, and then it is the okay, and it's very typical video game shit where in 2 weeks no one's going to be.
Yeah.
I can't believe they're charging more than the other one because of the thing with the stuff. Blah, blah, blah. It's like. There's a bunch of not weird stuff, but it's like one of these things you look at and you go, okay, and you move on.
I feel like for me, it's the lack of the reaction that I'm surprised by, because I've not seen as many people, I guess, comment on it. And like, I feel like in that initial reveal, it was, oh man, the disc drive looks goofy. And like beyond that, it was, oh, it's more expensive, like for the digital version. And like, I think beyond that, like I wasn't seeing many people have comments on it. So I feel like it feels more like a business as usual thing. It doesn't feel like people have a lot to say about it, and I don't know why that is.
I feel because again, I think it's just like okay. Is it more powerful? No.
Yeah.
Is it this? No. Is it like super small? No. All right, it's happening. And again, you're again, if you want to be here and you want to be mad about the price increase, which is $50. I'm not saying it doesn't exist or whatever. There is the argument that you're getting more gigabytes, even though it's not a crazy amount or whatever. But, so it's like. It's a weird hill to die on to be mad about it, to have anything to say. And I think as usual, it comes back to well, all right, then go buy a PS5 right now. Like they're giving you the runway, right? Of like, well, if you don't like it, go buy one now. And then also how many people you probably have a PS5 by now if you want a PS5 for the most part. I know at least the people listening and commenting and tweeting, right? Yeah. From our organizations and groups and things like that. So it's like, it's another moot point that you're arguing.
It also looks similar enough to the PS5 already that I just don't think it's a big deal. Right? Yeah, it's not like it's a redesign. It's not like it's a it's like the different PS3 versions.
What I would be stoked about, right, is if they brought it down to being like Xbox Series S small. You know how much I like. The first thing we did is I had Kevin bring the tape measure in my backpack out here. It'll fit in my backpack for travel. Great. That's all I wanted out of a different.
Honestly,
PS5.
If they were to do this at last month's State of Play, which I guess I'm a little surprised that they didn't close out a State of Play or like have this there because you're announcing it this close already. But if they were to do that, I think the way to drive the point home and get people excited about it would have been to put it next to a current model PS5 and go, hey, this is how much smaller it is than the PS5. But my counter argument to myself would be, is it that much smaller? Like, is it going to be the thing where it's like once you put
it's like an inch, right? It's like an inch and a little bit more.
It's like a little bit shorter, but then it looks skinny. It looks a lot skinnier.
It looks skinnier, yeah. But I mean height wise.
Yeah. But is it one of those things where you put them next to each other and it's like, okay, yeah, I guess it's smaller, but it's not mind blowing? And if that's the case, then I get not putting it in a.
And I feel like that's the thing. Again, why isn't this part of State of Play? I feel like this would have detracted from talking about the games. And those are meant that State of Play and most State of Plays are meant to talk about games, right? It's the same thing. I
couldn't tell you one game that was at that State of Play right now.
And you definitely wouldn't have, if there was this thing happening, this would have been the only thing we were talking about, right? It's kind of similar to the PlayStation Portal, where again, those hardware announcements, the earbuds and the headphones, right? Like those have lived outside of State of Plays because there's it's a weird thing to even put in there and then try to message, right? Of like, unless you're gonna do the Shuhei and white gloves moving it around. That works. If you like, even if you went to the blog right now about the new PlayStation 5, they have a little trailer sizzle reel thing, but it's not super sexy and it doesn't really like give you all the information. It probably makes more questions if it was at the end of the State of Play. Like, you've seen all those cool games. Now let's talk about the future of the console itself. Like, that just isn't how they do State of Plays.
Question number 2. This comes from Dalton F. Who says, how do you think Sony will handle faceplates going forward now that the slim model ones have to be different than the original model?
They are dead. I think that would be my interpretation on it. I would assume based on what they've seen for attach rates for different faceplates through so far that they were like, this is not worth worrying about. Obviously, it's possible. Like will you have more custom faceplates? Yes, there will be let's just guess a Wolverine PlayStation 5. They will do a Wolverine PlayStation 5. I don't know if those faceplates will be available in Target as well, or if it'll just be you have to buy the PlayStation 5 that is Wolverine branded kind of thing. I think you'll still get those kind of special edition consoles, but I would imagine you're not going to get a special edition faceplates anymore.
Really, I don't see. Well, I guess I don't know. I don't know for sure how these faceplates come off and how easy they come off and all that stuff. It's the same as the current PS5.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that break in it, right? So like, what do you do with that?
So I would think that if they still come off, I think you continue to get them. I think old PS5 now isn't going to get any more.
And see, but right there, you cut off your nose to spite your face.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me we have an install base of what is it, a little over 15 million now? I haven't looked at. I'm not. The
Oh,
stats
like
guy.
PS5 owners?
Yeah.
I would say 40 million.
Oh
right?
shit! Fuck, really? You know me.
Maybe.
I talk. I have it. Google.
It's definitely way more than 15 million. I'll tell you that.
I remember. Well, I have if you know, I have the thing in here called facts that I can then just go in and click on and see where are we at right now.
15 million?
What is it for PlayStation 5?
Here we go. They announced 40 million back in July.
Thank you. Yeah, so I don't ever remember any of those numbers. Anyways, so you have 40 million units out there. Now you have a new SKU being introduced. Do you make any more? So you have 40 million people to serve that could buy faceplates, but I'm also trying to get you to buy the new system. So am I sitting there going, let's make faceplates, the big faceplates for the 40 million, and even though we don't sell that console anymore, that sounds stupid.
Yeah.
Am I then saying, well, let's make new faceplates for the new console, but we've barely sold 1 million of those by the time you start having these conversations or something to that effect? I would think the way to get people like me that are obsessed with certain IP to buy the new PlayStation is to do the special edition console and limit it to that. So it is.
Okay.
You can't
I can
fucking
see
wait
that.
for Wolverine and you have an OG PlayStation 5. Here's the reason to buy the new one.
Yeah.
Oh, you loved Ghost of Tsushima? Here's Ghost of Tsushima 2, and here's the brand new PS5 Slim for that.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think you do that, and I don't think you sell individually.
I want to say I saw somewhere that they were going to do you know how they announced like the Earth Tone, like dual. This is the state of play that you weren't even here for.
Yeah.
But like in that state of play, they announced like the Earth Tone colored dual sense stuff. I believe somewhere, and you can double check me. They said they're doing that for the new faceplates.
Okay.
I could be wrong because I'm sure I just saw some person on Twitter say this. So double check me. But I could see maybe those of like the one-offs. And then, yeah, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
The Deep Earth collection.
Deep Earth
A new
collection,
metallic colorway for PS5.
Yeah, the earth tones that aren't really earth tones.
And you heard they're doing this for the new PlayStation 5?
I'm pretty sure I saw it on Twitter. But like, double check me for sure on that. That's definitely your wrong one.
We don't even do You're Wrong for this show.
KindaFunny.com/you're wrong. Right in. One more question for this. Quincy writes in and says, since the new PS5 Slim has digital and disk drive versions, can you give a quick prediction for the PS5 Pro? Will there be a disk drive and digital SKUs or just one version? This I find interesting. For one, like, I'm still not a belief that we're going to get a PS5 Pro, but if they do a PS5 Pro, do we get a disc version?
It's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
My prediction would be that they'd be watching. Well, I guess they'd probably already be not in production, but feeling it out. But I think you would be looking at who's buying these new units and how many people are buying the digital only PlayStation 5.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are buying the disc drive? Are we actually serving that audience? As before we went live today, Wario64 put up a thing, right, saying that possibly by the end of, and I think I'm right on this, possibly by the end of Q1 2024, Best Buy is going to stop selling physical Blu-rays and 4K things like that, right? Which isn't necessarily video games, but is lining up with the digital future we're hurtling towards and what's happening with that and how that works. What gets interesting about it, is like who is buying a PlayStation 5 Pro? Again, if you were to eliminate the small SKU we're talking about right now, and this is the only one, then that's a different ball of wax. But early adopters are going to be people who want the highest fidelity and probably are having the best internet and probably paying for the best experience. And like, I think they're in a place where they're not as worried about their internet, so I wouldn't worry about it as well.
Yeah, I think I think if you go by the new standard of having a disk drive now, a detachable disk drive for PlayStation, then I think you can get away with selling just a digital console for a PS5 Pro and then just having the disk drive be a thing that you can buy later on.
Yeah.
Like just have that be the standard option if people really want a disk drive.
Yeah, I think they're going to be watching the numbers quite closely to see what happens right now with PlayStation discs going forward, right, and how it is. But even if you jump to Xbox Series S, and I'm not coming on the Xbox XCast territory here, but that was the thing, right, that like the Series S is outselling the Series X. Like that, there's more of those, and S's don't have a disk drive, right? Like we're very much at this point where the conversation of digital, not being the only future, but being the majority future is upon us.
Yeah, I think we're right there.
And so it's like at that point, when do you rip the Band-Aid off? When do you worry about this? When do you go?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll also say I'm trying to find these deep earth tone PS5 faceplates for the new one. I can't find them, and so just consider me wrong on that one.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, unless somebody proves me right. If you prove me right in the comments, or tweet at me if you do find what I'm talking about. Greg.
Yeah.
It's time for PlayStation picks. We got a quick drop for you. Honkai Star Rail came out this week for PS5. This week you're also getting Little Gator Game for PS5, PS4, Roblox for PS4, Wildcard Football for PS4, PS5, Salt Sea Chronicles for PS5, and Lords of the Fallen 2023
Lords of the Fallen
for PS5. I picked Spider-Man 2.
Yeah,
play
yeah.
for
There's been a lot
PlayStation.
of that. There's
I
been a
can't
lot
talk
of that.
about Spider-Man 2, and so you have to wait till next week to hear me talk about that.
That's right, because of course Monday, the Kind of Funny Games cast review of Spider-Man 2 will post. Remember, watch it, consume it, enjoy it, then look at all the other Spider-Man reviews, and then say, hey, I got questions, and write them in to kindafunny.com/PSILY. So myself, Janet, and Blessing can answer your questions on PS I Love You, which we'll be posting on Tuesday next week. Of course, you can watch it. Patreon.com/kindafunny next Monday when we record it. I also played Spider-Man 2 and can't talk about it. I also played Redacted. Can't talk about that because review season never ends. And then I did a little bit more Alan Wake. You know what I mean? Where I was like, okay, I can jump back into this a little bit. And then I was like, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for Alan Wake 2. Now that again, Spider-Man 2, other Redacted game. There's some other game I think I just got today where it's like, I'm starting to feel like I'm going to read the Wikipedia for Alan Wake.
Yeah.
There's not that much left. I think I got 2 chapters left, but it's just like, I don't know when I'll sit down and be able to put that time aside to go through it.
I don't have the Alan Wake 2 fire in me.
Really?
Yeah, like I'm not antsy
It's
for
spooky season. I'm so ready for it.
I'm not antsy for it.
I am.
Oh no.
I wish we had codes.
Give me Mario. Where's Mario? You know what I mean?
Mario. That's not what we're talking about
Give me
today.
Mario.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are just days away from your next episode of PS I Love You XOXO. Watch us record it live Monday. No spoilers for Spider-Man 2. Of course, you can get it Tuesday everywhere. That's how it usually works, though. Patreon.com/kindafunny for all the live recordings like Anthony's watching, Ryan's watching, Norman's watching. Of course, you can get all the other shows there. Watch them record Saw and Review and all that jazz. The Kinda Funny podcast, you name it. You could also get exclusive shows like Kinda Feudy, the Next Gen podcast, and Gregway. Of course, you could also just support us and say, hey, you're doing a good job. However, if you got no bucks to toss our way, no big deal. YouTube.com/kindafunnygames. Podcast services around the globe each and every week. Please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, leave an iTunes review, leave a star rating on Spotify, and of course, just tweet a Blessing and say, hey, you look good in every shirt you wear.
Norman in the Patreon chat says, Blessing is right. Sony announced on the blog that the new colors will be available in early 2024. Did it.
But
we got them. But are we talking about for the new PlayStation, or are they just talking about in general?
We're not.
You know what? Never mind.
No one's worried about if they're coming out. We're saying when are they coming out?
And what
If it's on the
platform?
blog, then they've only put up one thing. It was called Deep Earth. What was it?
Deep Earth colors, but that was before they announced.
Oh, you're right. A variety of PS5 console covers for the new model will be available starting in early 2024,
We did it.
including an all matte black colorway and the Deep Earth collection colors in volcanic red, cobalt blue, and sterling silver.
You know what I've learned is that I'm never wrong.
That's true. Kid's never
never
been wrong in his life.
Thank you, Barrett.
As you can see, here come the UMDs right next to the PSP. So
It's because they're the same
never
size.
been
as the
wron
PSP.
in his
Discs
entire
aren't that
life.
small. Also, I'm pointing the wrong way. Discs aren't
Ladies and
that
gentlemen,
Also, the
until
PSP right
next
behind you.
episode when we are talking about Spider-Man 2, it's been our pleasure to serve you.